I'm Lahoma Buckley.
Judy Barber.
Bernice Dix. I got hired in Grion in 1972. Would like to say good afternoon to all my fellow retirees from Grion.
I retired as electrician with 36 plus years of service with General Motors, 1977.
My name is Gloria Jones Israel. I was married to Roy Lee Israel. He worked at the Malibu Iron. He did 35 years, and he retired.
I started in '78 and retired in 2009 as a journeyman pipe fitter classification.
My name is Hurley Coleman, and I'm a pastor.
You would share with us your name and...
My name is Delaney Connor. I started working at the Malibu plant in 1976. I went in as a check parts in a little house, and I moved from there to Knockout, which was the worstest job any woman could have. Parts weighing 50 and 60 pounds, you had to lift up, check them, make sure they was right.
My name is Joaquin Diaz. I was employed at the Saginaw Steering Gear back in 1978. I hired in as a laborer, working on columns, building certain steering columns. It was repetitious work. It was heavy work. And I often listened to the older workers who always had the best information on how to do a job and not hurt yourself, or how to get the job done properly.
Well, my foundation, my connection with General Motors is kind of distant because I didn't work in any of the General Motors foundries or factories. I did work one summer in steering gear, but my father was part of the great migration from the South in the late 40s. He came here because there were jobs available. He came in 1948 and walked to the plant and got a job that day. He was one of many that came from the South. This was maybe the second generation after slavery that began moving to the northern areas.
My name's Philip Fisnaw. I started with GM in August of 1969.
My name is Carolyn Jones, and I started at the Malibu in 1973, and I started in the core room.
My name is Jose Medina. Actually, I started working November 1968. I started working production for a little bit at the Gridiron. 1969, I became an apprentice electrician. I think I worked about maybe 5-6 months as an apprentice electrician. And then I got drafted by the Army. I volunteered Navy. I went Navy because there were too many kids dying in Vietnam, so I enlisted Navy. But then when I came back, when I got out of the Navy, I went back to work at General Motors in 1972.
I left that job and went to the Gridiron. Left the Gridiron, came back to the Malibu. But at the Gridiron, I worked in the core room also, and also worked on the wall. And yeah, working on the wall is when you go in and they don't have a particular job for you, then you stand on the wall and a foreman would come and get you and and take you to their department if they were short. So I worked on the wall, then I went to the core room at the Gridiron.
It's waste of the bars that they put into these machines that off the part, and all of a sudden these chips will fall down below the belly of the automatic. And it was a large department where you had to walk down an aisle that was considered to be about almost 300 feet. And I had to take care of that aisle. Now baskets for the operators, and each operator had 3 automatics to work on. Each of them had a production, and their production was based on how many parts they put out. Some needed just one basket, some needed maybe two, but others needed 5 or more because they were bigger parts. And I had to go and take a walking transport to pick up these baskets throughout the plant. Then I would take care of the chips that would convey to my corner of the world where I had to go downstairs and remove the chips from the hopper that were dumped from truck drivers, and then move a conveyor. Once all these chips transferred, they will transfer outside the plant where there was a train cart. And knowing that you could troubleshoot some of the issues that you may have on your job, they thought maybe I'll be better off working on a transfer where there's a sense of working with different machines and computers and setting up tools and doing all sorts of things. And by doing that, you also had to work with the skilled trades, your electricians, your millwrights, your pipe fitters, and your tin bangers, which were tinsmith. So we did a lot of things in that job, but it took 3 people to run a transfer.
Before then, I was taking classes to be an RN, but then I divorced my husband, and I didn't want to be on the state. So I was sending applications through my brother ever since back in the early 70s. He wasn't turning them in. He said it wasn't a place for a lady. I went to the plant, I got an application. I put on there, 4 children, need a job real bad, don't want to be on the state. They called me that Tuesday. I took my physical that Tuesday. I started that Wednesday, I think.
I started in 1977, and I was hired as a production worker and machine operator. I took the apprenticeship test, and in 1978, I was their very first woman apprentice.
One of the things that often happened was that an individual would say, I'm left-handed, or I'm right-handed. And you soon found out that there was no such thing as being right-handed or left-handed in doing a job. You had to use both hands. So you learned, be it right or left, you learned how to do it that way. And it made things a lot easier on you. If you didn't do it the proper way, you'd come up with aches and pains that you couldn't even imagine. There was many phases where you had to use a tool to make a part. There was one where you used they were like giant boulders, or what you would call marbles, and they were inserted into like a cone, and there was 6 balls that had to fit inside this cone, looked like an ice cream cone. So you'd have to go like this. There was a certain way that you had to put those balls into that little circle, and it would slip, and you would bang your hand, and your hands would just sting of the pain because it was so hard to put in sometimes. So you would try to do that, and as a result of that, learning the job, there was so much strain involved there that there were times that I couldn't even button my shirt after I got out of work, and my hands were always in pain.
And the foundries, the core rooms, the melting shop. In other words, that was called the cubulos. And it was very warm there. In the summers, it was really hot.
I had a couple of jobs because I worked down in the foundry in the gray iron, dropping cores in a mold. It was, the mold that they make the motors with. My job was to stand there and drop a core in the end of the mold to save iron.
Well, yeah, it's all heated up just like an oven, and it's full of oil just dripping down. So when they go and put their bodies into it to change a tool or relieve a part, they're in there for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then they have to retrieve and do that process over and over just to set up that tool. And doing that, they're just hot all the time. I mean, they have to more or less find a place where they can cool off next to a fan or something like that after they get their jobs done.
That's why I'm in the shape I'm in today. I hurt my back in 1977. It popped, just like you pop your finger. So finally, I went out to Saginaw General. They took pictures of me, and they told me that I had 3 herniated discs, but they weren't bad enough for surgery. So I went on, and I took care of my brother and his wife and just let myself go. And then when they did do surgery on me, I got a scar that long in my back.
And you had maybe 15 people working on that line, and it would just continuously go around and around, never stop. And again, it was this repetitious work with your hands. And eventually, I wound up with a carpal tunnel, and I had to have both my hands operated on because my hands started to become useless. Again, I couldn't. And it was during those times when you complained about your hands that you were given other jobs, and because you couldn't use your hands like you wanted to use because your hands weren't normal, you were accused of being lazy and not wanting to work. And it wasn't that at all. It was just that you were injured, actually, and there was no excuses. You had to do your job regardless. If you wanted to keep your job, you'd better do your job. And you had 90 days to prove that you could be a worthy member. So you had to deal with these type of situations. And in other words, take the pain, go through the process of learning jobs, and just grit your teeth while you were having pain to get through this 90-day process.
We didn't know how bad GM, how bad the factory and the foundry jobs were working on their bodies, and the number of illnesses and number of situations that people live with.
And so I remember back then when my father, L.G. Jones Sr., was working at Gray Iron. You know, back then a lot of people was dying with colon cancer and lung cancer. But my father, he passed away with colon cancer. And that Bethesda was out, but not enough back then where my father could start, drawing. But that what took my husband away from here. He worked out there in the plant for so long. He worked around at Augusta, and he didn't take care of himself, do what he's supposed to do, because he wasn't supposed to smoke. And that something was hard for him to stop doing. So he kept on, so eventually it turned into cancer on the lungs.
So again, I had the operations, and that was great. I could use my hands, but when I lost my shoulders, like I said, I didn't know that was my problem. And it was until I actually wound up like this, and I couldn't do anything. And they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and they gave me all kinds of tests. And they poked me, and they gave me electrical shocks, and they finally looked at my shoulders and said, "Man, you have 2 torn rotor cuffs." I knew about my hands. I had 3 operations for carpal tunnel.
This supervisor, I came out on permanent and total disability because a supervisor I had was so cruel to me. My mind almost clicked. And they said, I didn't know, I was in the world for a whole year. And just to think about GM and hear that guy talk, he had it easy. Everything under your motor, I can tell you what it is. Brake discs, truck discs. I had a restriction. I had carpal tunnel. I had surgery on both wrists, carpal tunnel. He put me to throwing truck knuckles, truck flywheels, truck brake discs. That guy evidently was from steering gear. 89 days after I got hired, and gray iron, they called me to steering gear. But back then, you was lucky to get your 90 days.
After the 90-day process was over, you learned to get into a little better job. As new people started coming in, you started going up the ladder. And the new people took the jobs that you were introduced to. And as you moved up, the jobs got sometimes a little easier. Well, I couldn't stop the way they were thinking. All I could do was try to do my best and survive the ridicule.
Well, I got to the point where I told a guy I wanted to buy a gun. And the reason is I was working, and this young girl, I was seen and brought in, they didn't give me the opportunity to get off the line. And what happened is, it ate me up a little bit because I was next in line to get off the line, and they had her off the line right off the bat. And the process was that when you work on the line, somebody comes in, you'll be the person to get off. Well, it didn't happen, and for about 2 weeks, it was kind of eating me up. Found out that the foreman was sort of trying to, have a relationship with this girl. So I had intentions of buying a gun and blowing his head off. And that's how bad I got. So when I got suicidal, I started thinking, I said, I gotta end this life. And that's one of the reasons I couldn't take it. I guess somebody told me, he says, you want everything to be the way you want it. I says, yeah, but I don't force anybody to do that. I said, if I find my area messed up, I'll clean it and no words will be said. But yet, they'll purposely mess up my area. And guys will tell me, you should get even with these guys. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just gonna take care of it. And that's how I kind of work out my problems. I didn't retaliate, but it got to the point where you pushed me too far. And that's when the wife said, you buy a gun, I'm going to divorce you. And I said to myself, it doesn't matter, But I was going haywire, I guess. They more or less sent me to a psychiatrist, I guess. Yeah, it took a while, but it changed. I got back with church and all that. Everything changed. And I started just accepting everything. So I stopped hanging around with negatives. People that would say something negative, I just won't listen to that. And it's been like that for maybe about 10 years before I retired. So it worked out. You say nice things to people, you get back nice things. So I don't tend to talk about anybody or say anything bad about anybody. And that's one of the reasons I feel better now. My life became better.
Well, the job would make you drink.
Sure did. I drank every day.
Mm-hmm. It would make you drink. It was
Went
a lot
to
of
work
pressure.
drinking. Leave breaking, come back drinking.
Mhm.
They gone.
Mhm. Yeah.
My
Off the
husband,
job.
would leave. He'd go on break, go to the store, buy some liquor, him about 4 others. Go back to work with the liquor in his system. Did it for a long time, till he retired.
There was so many other things too. That I didn't mention it, but there was also a lot of prejudice in the plants. It was disheartening to see that a union with so many things that we did have in common as workers and so forth also could be so negative because we were literally a rainbow of people, and yet you still seen that racism was still alive within the ranks of the workers, the workforces. So you just had to deal with it. You could fight, which wouldn't get you anywhere except fired. But You had to learn to just try to get along as best you could, but it's there. I don't think it'll ever. I don't think it'll ever stop, no matter where you go.
Well, drink every day.
I didn't drink every day.
But mine did. He drank every day.
But in the 70s, when we started, you didn't dare tell your boss you had a problem with the children at home. You didn't say, I can't get a sitter till 6:30, daycare doesn't open till 6:30. If you have to punch in at 6:12, you better well be there. We didn't even mention to the guys a lot of the issues we had with children, because they expected women couldn't hold these jobs because they have children. So we had to downplay that a lot. And my son played freshman football it'd be JV football on Thursday night. His position was bench, fourth string, I think. But if I wanted to go out and watch his game, the bosses wouldn't give me a pass out to go to the game. But on Thursday night, when the guys got their paycheck, they'd get a pass out and go to the bar. So I would tell my boss that I need a pass out because I'm going to the bar. And I would get one. But I couldn't get a pass out to go watch a child play football.
I did work days. That was a hard shift to work, seeing how I had teenagers at the time. And one day, one of my breaks, something just told me to go home. So I left the plant and went home. And when I got there, I had a house full of kids who was all skipping school at my house. When I walked in, they all had excuses, but I told them, I said, if I catch any of you here again, I'm telling your parents, and you'll never know when I'll be coming back.
Yes, I had two sons, and my wife was fortunate to stay home, to be a stay-at-home mom. I mean, I coached baseball, I coached basketball. I was involved in scouting, so, I always made sure that I was around for that stuff. I would take time off. If they had special school plays or something, I would take off the afternoon or whatever the time of the play was and go and see the school play. You had a certain deadline by the first of the year to put it in, apply for a vacation. And then, I think it was like by February, you had to have it in. And then it came by seniority. Then after that, it was just whoever applied for vacation time, if they had somebody that wasn't working, it was not be on vacation, that maybe you could have it off then.
It was in second shift, and it was dark, and we were up there changing the light, and he physically pushed against me and started saying things in my ear about what was happening in cars going by that wasn't really happening, sexual innuendos about what he was seeing. I was terrified. I thought, oh my God, will he try to push me out of here, or I just want to get to the ground. When I got to the ground, I looked for my foreman, and I said, don't you ever have me work with that man out in the parking lot alone again. I told him what happened, and I said, and I don't want to file a complaint. I said, I don't want to be labeled one of those, and that's exactly how it was looked at back then. It's like, oh, that's another one of those, they want to call them feminists, which I'm proud to be a feminist. I'm proud to want to fight for women's issues. But I was intimidated. I didn't want it out what he had done. I did not want it out in the plant what I had went through. I just wanted to be safe.
But I had a blessed time while I was there, because my brother had told the guys, my sister coming in, and don't none of y'all talk to her. And I mean that. So I didn't have a problem with any of the guys. I was truly blessed in the plant.
Because you're getting the same pay as the men, so you should be able to work. I said, Mike, as near as I can figure out, I should get more pay than the men. What do you mean? And he just flying like that. I says, well, when you reef on a wrench, what do you use? Maybe about 40% of your strength, maybe 50? I would catch the wrench with my pelvic bone and lean my whole body down in it. And I says, and I'm using like 85% or 90% of my strength, so I should get paid more. He didn't speak to me for a couple of years.
Because I told them when I got hired in GM, I'm a lady here, and I'm going to be a lady when I leave.
One of the things that they worried about the most when I hired in as electrician, was I going to carry my own extension ladder? Was
Yeah.
I going to carry it? So the older journeyman took me outside the plant and taught me the balance technique, how to put that ladder on my shoulder and take off down the aisle and carry it. And then I took off down the aisle carrying this huge extension ladder. And I heard so many compliments. They just never thought they would ever see a woman carrying that ladder. And it's the smallest part of my job.
You're going to stand out when you're the only woman in a department of 500, so you better well be good.
I just appreciate so much the opportunities that were afforded to me working for General Motors and having UAW representation. Every day, I spread the word that I'm so thankful for the pension that I have. And I'm so thankful to the UAW who negotiated that for me, and General Motors who provided the work for me. And I'm very sad today that those opportunities aren't available for our young people.
And I would most heartedly agree. The UAW negotiates for retirees wonderfully because according to the federal laws regarding unions, they can't negotiate for retirees. That's not a binding negotiating item. But we have dental, eyeglass coverage,
Yes.
and medical as retirees.
It kept the economy. As a matter of fact, it was the economy. All of the people that came to our church were working in the GM plants, and all the other people that in other churches that I knew. And I saw those churches flourish because those families flourished because GM was there. GM provided the income, it provided stability. An individual could get a job in a factory and buy a home, raise their family, and successfully retire.
Oh yeah, and when I first started, there must have been about 12,000 people working there at the plant. But when I retired, I think there was only about 600 or 700. So
Our church was built in 1960. 1960, there were 30 members of our church, and I would say 80%, 85% of those members were working for GM. In 2010, when I did a survey of my congregation, that same church now only had 2 people who were employed by GM.
I didn't go back because it messed so many people's homes up. People was losing jobs, people was losing their houses, people was divorcing their wives and stuff like that.
We were like family, and no one wanted to leave their job. They liked their jobs.
If I had to do it over again, I'd just work 5 days. 7 days and 12 hours wasn't good. And you really don't get anywhere. Well, you can spend time with your family, that'll be the best thing. I miss a lot of things as far as family. Now I have a son that lives somewhere else, and you know, I only have one son, so it's just like you don't get to see that person that much anymore.
It was great for me.
I wouldn't go back.
it was all, I mean, it's positive. I think a lot of kids should think about skilled trades, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, at the time, on the buyout process, they said you were going to be guaranteed the benefits and wages of GM, the same as you were if you transferred to a GM plant. And then it was a few years after that, we lost our medical and dental benefits. Then we found out a little bit later that our pension wasn't a GM pension, it was under the PGB.
I said, you're not going to pay me to stay home. He said, yes, we are. I said, no, you're not. What is it you're not telling me? And what it was, they were going to send me home, yes. And they were going to pay me, yes. But they were only going to pay me half my wages.
It was very difficult when our plant, Saginaw Parts Plant, that's where I started in 1977. When it closed in 1983, it was devastating. It was devastating to all the people that worked there. There were people that their father worked there, their grandfather worked there, That's how they got into the plant. Some of them weren't going to have a job with my seniority date that weren't skilled trades. And there were people that started drinking. There were people that had heart attacks and died. And it was so stressful. I just can't even, I don't even know how to put into words how devastating that was when we were told our plant was closing.
Yeah, the benefits. I mean, I live with insurance, where I see a lot of people suffering from that. And, you know, I do get my teeth and my eyes checked, which a lot of people at my age tend to have problems. And if I see anything out of it, it was more the benefits that I received from General Motors that got me through. Otherwise, I would have quit a long time ago. The money wasn't all that great for the jobs that you, being in the plant with no lookout. For the several years I had to work in the middle of the plant and never knew if it was light or day out there.
Your spending habits change completely when there is no overtime and there's just one plain check of half of your wages. And that's what they did to me for, they said they were doing me a favor, but they put me out 5 years ahead of my time, almost 6. In order to qualify for the program, you had to have 25 years in. They said they were doing me a favor, and they put me in the program when I only had 24. Again, that was no favor, because they took half of my wages, which I had to live on for the next almost 5.5 years. And then when at the end of that, they also put me out early, which took me from that income to a lower income with my retirement.
And the people you got to meet, I mean, one thing GM did, they didn't discriminate when it come to hiring. They were competing against the Vietnam War and the draft. They're competing against other plants. So we had a great diverse bunch of people in our plant. Me and my buddy always reminisces about the good times we used to have in the plant, because you had probably 500 to 600 people within 4 or 5 years age difference from 18 to 25, hiring in together. You got to know each other real well, you know. And I always said, if you hired in 1970 to early mid 1976, you had a great 30-year window of work. You know, you're fortunate to be in that window where you could get 30 years of work in there.
So what many people may not understand is that a big economic engine like GM actually does more than provide a tax base. It provides an emotional base. It provides a social base.
The rewards that I had, the pay that I earned allowed me to save for my retirement. I looked ahead. I only wish that I would have started saving a lot sooner, because I'm retired now, and I did put away some funds, but it's not like when I was working. When I was working, I didn't have to maintain a checking account. I just went out and bought what I wanted, when I wanted, what I wanted. And it was, again, that I had to speak to the family when things started changing. It's no longer what we want. It's now what we need that we buy.
It was the worst experience of my life. The only thing I enjoy is my benefits. I wouldn't treat a dog the way I was treated when I went there.
You had to go through something to learn something. So I believe, yeah, I had to go through something like that. It made me stronger in some ways. I don't see nothing negative anymore for me to say something bad about somebody. I see myself as a person that can look at somebody and say, look, that person is just like me. We're both in the same boat. Otherwise, if I didn't want to be in that boat, I'll be somewhere else. Like people that are not as fortunate living in America, or I could be back where my father came from. And he left that country a long time ago. I mean, they asked me if I ever want to go back there. I said, no, not me. I like it here. In fact, I like Saginaw.